Do chord inversions, root third, fifth, flat seventh. We'll use the dominant seventh chord. We'll do G. I'm going to explain some things through on here because it's going to vary. Some people know some of this stuff, some people don't. So I'm just going to try to go through it as best I can for everybody. The first chord we're going to start with B on the fifth string, and our first chord is going to be what I would consider a B minor 7 flat 5 chord if you just look at it. It's also a G7th chord with a A right here. So this is the third, the flat seventh, that's the ninth, and that's the fifth. Your root is right here. So from any root chord that you do, whatever key you're in, like let's say you're in C, you know, you play a E minor 7 flat 5 looking chord up a third from the root. If you're in A, it's going to be that C sharp minor 7 flat 5. We're in G, and also if you look at it, if you threw the G on it, that's the root, the third, the flat seventh, the ninth, and the fifth. You could also put the G on the top of the chord if you wanted, like this. So that's just adding the root on top, or you could leave it like this. All these little differences, these little things you can add, they affect you know, the sound and the feel of the song, you know. So the next chord we'll do is going to be off the fifth, off of G. So this is going to look like an E7th chord shape that you're used to already. We're going to play it here on the fifth fret. So what I think is really important, I'd like to tell you from my perspective, is I'm really into naming notes and scale degrees, or, you know, this is the fifth, this is the root, this is the third, this is the flat seventh. Instead of just learning a shape, which is kind of what I think we, you know, in general, a lot of guitar players tend to do. We see a shape, we go, oh, I can do that, we do that, we plug it in, and that's cool. But I'm very much into knowing the notes, what are the scale degrees, because then from there it's easier to form chords and make up different ideas down the road too. I mean, if you know that this is the fifth, this is the root, this is the third, that's the flat seventh, you could put the ninth on it. If this is the root, then the ninth would be A. So then you would just have the fifth, the ninth, the third, and the flat seventh. Now, when I was a little kid, there was some issue of Guitar Player. I don't know who posted the lesson on there. It's been too long. I was a little kid, but somebody was just kind of going through some basic chords and saying this is the root, this is the fifth, this is the third, and it was really helpful to me to just see how it was written out, and hopefully it'll help you out too. So this chord isn't really one that you can go to, you know, quickly. Usually, you know, it's more of a jazz kind of a thing. For a blues, sometimes this minus the root, or with the root. But what's cool is that's a little easier to, you can work on sliding into that one too if you want. I'll go through and show you how to make altered dominant chords in the next lesson. That'll be, I really like altered dominant chords a lot, so it'll be cool. This is the flat seventh up here, right? So this is the third of G. This is, that's G, that's the third, that's the fifth, that's the flat seventh. So from the flat seventh, we need the notes, the third and the fifth and the root. So this is the flat seven, this is the third, this is the fifth, and that's the root, which is F, B, D, and G. Now that chord as it stands sounds good. Now the thing we're adding is the ninth, right? The ninth, it would be here. Right, so alright, ninth. You can hear when you invert this chord, it has a nice, you know, you can do-do-da, you can hear that upper note. Now, from here we go to the root, which is the root, the third, the flat seventh, and the ninth. And then from here, we're just going to be up an octave from down here. So this is B minor 7 flat 5, or also a G9 chord minus the root, G dominant 7th 9 chord minus the root. So that's the 3rd, flat 7th, 9th, and the 5th. So one important thing to do, and I know it's going to sound probably very basic, but if you can go up, make sure you go back down, or start going back down too, because it's very easy to kind of get into this groove where you're doing this, and come back down like... I did a different chord there, I'll show you that one in a minute. So you can see how these chords come in handy. I'll show you some turnarounds in this lesson too. So basically you're talking about, we're going to try to stay on the 5th string. When I was first learning a lot of these chords, when I was like 17, I would go, okay, well, you know, here's a C, you know, and here's an F, and here's a G, here's an F, and there's a C, or here's a C, here's an F, here's a G, right? Like very kind of shape. I wasn't doing a whole lot of voice leading, because, you know, when you're first beginning, you know, voice leading it takes you kind of a while to get with voice leading, you know, and how to smoothly go from chord to chord. So this is the 3rd of G, this is the 5th, this is the flat 7th. I'm going to show you this one off the flat 7th, I like this one a lot. This is the flat 7, which is F on G, and this is the 3rd, which is B. This is the 13th, or the 6th of the chord, and this is the root. That's a very useful chord, especially if you're like doing a jump thing or a jazz thing. That's a cool chord to put in a blues, like that. Also, the other one is this. So now all you're doing is playing an F, a B, an E, and an A on your G chord. Now you could kind of work it like that when you go through these chords, like say you got a G like this. You know, when you're comping. Now when I go to C, I said that you can go to the 3rd of the chord, right? Like down here is the 3rd of G, from the G to the B. So when you go to C, E minor 7 flat 5 will be your next chord. So when in blues we go from G, you know, to C to G, right? 1 to the 4, and then we go to the 5, which is D. So you got the 1 chord, which is G. Here comes C. This is C, right, which is an E minor 7 flat 5 or a dominant 7 9th chord. To go to D, all we have to do is go up to this, which is F sharp, flat 7, 9th, and the 5th of D. So you can also put the 13th on a dominant 7 9th chord, like we did here. So I'll backtrack for a second. I'll go to the 4 chord on C dominant 7th with a 9, right? The other way to do it is from the 1 chord, which is G, we're on B minor 7 flat 5, we go to the 4 chord, which is C, we just go to the D for the 5 chord, down to the 4 chord, which is C, back down to G there, right? So from C, when you go up to the 3rd of the chord, we said that was E minor 7 flat 5, right? So, and this is the one that looks like this shape from the C chord, with the 5th, the root, the 3rd, the flat 7th. You put the 9th on it, right? So, this guitar's kind of fretting out a little up there. So on the C, that's the flat 7, that's the 3rd, that's the 5th, and that's the root. So you've got, it's the same chord as you had here on the G, right? It looks more like an F because it's just got a different note in the bass, right? Flat 7. And then that's flat 7 of C, that's E, that's the fifth, and that's the root, so the ninth is also here. Right, and then we're up to C again. So one thing to do is say that we start here. A good voice leading idea to do for yourself is try not to move around too much. All right, so this is G, starting on the flat 7, which is F. Okay, we're in C, but we're starting on the E of the chord, right? What if I go down to here? That's C again, right? Sharp 9 on your dominant 7th chord, which is an F up here, on your dominant 7th on your 5 chord. So here's your D 7th, which is your 5 chord, root 3rd, flat 7, 9th. And then when the flat 7th of D is right here, which is C, then you have F sharp. Right, so that's the flat 7th of D, which is the 5 chord again, right? The 3rd, which is F sharp, A, which is the 5th, D is the root. Then you could also put the 9th on it up here. That's a little same chord as from G here on the flat 7 of that, D here, flat 7. A little more of a modern kind of, almost a blue notey kind of blue note sound for a dominant chord to my ear. Sounds more like C Lydian for D. We'll get into that later. So here's your root, here's your flat 7th, here's your root, here's your 3rd, here's your 5th up here of the chord. So if you were way up here, right, and you got a G chord, you could go to this, right? And way down below here, so from the 5 chord on D, totally changes. Even if you play you can push different things against these chords because it's still a blues, you know? It's still going back to the 1 chord in the end. But you can handle different changes in different ways. We'll get into that. So my suggestion to you is on the 5th string, take your dominant chords and try to voice lead them as much as you can.